Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of It's a DarMar, episode 38. Today I have a special guest from USA, David Tilton. He's an amazing concept artist that has been working in the industry on some very big titles, and I am finally brought him here, so I'm very happy that he has decided to join. Hi David, how are you?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
I'm very good. It's here 8 p.m. in Belgrade. What's the time in Los Angeles?
Oh, it's only 11 a.m., so
Your day is
super early.
starting. Your day is just
Yeah, no,
starting now.
exactly. Yeah, yours is ending, mine's starting. Yeah.
Yeah, that's how it goes in life. For someone it ends, for the other person starts. We have that saying.
Oh
So
yeah, for sure.
thank you so much, man, for joining us, and thank you for being my guest. Like, I really love your work, your artistic style to it, and I've been wanting to bring you for some time on the stream, and we are finally doing it.
Oh, thanks a ton, man. It's really, I know, awesome to hear stuff like that because like you don't typically hear that on the day to day. So,
That's
um,
because we sit at home all the time alone.
I know. Yeah, I know, exactly. Especially now.
Yeah, the freaking corona making us problems.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So I'm not gonna jump over the corona thing. I don't want to talk about it because everybody is talking about corona. We already know everything, right?
Yeah,
So
no, exactly.
this is the stream all about you, and I want to hear your beginnings. I want to know, did you draw as a kid? I want to know, did you go to the art school? So please, can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. I guess. Well, everybody knows my name, I guess now, since because your awesome introduction. So, hi, my name is David. Um, but let's see. I grew up in a small town in New Hampshire. For the people that aren't in the U.S. and don't know where that is, that's in the northeast of the country, like one of the first 13 colonies up there. Um, Grew up in a small town there. Started drawing probably back when I was in the like eighth grade, seventh grade, so middle school for Americans, or primary school, I guess. Um, but yeah, no, from there it kind of blossomed into me wanting to become a concept artist and all that stuff. So.
But how did you know that you want to be a concept artist? That's my question, because
Oh,
here
okay.
I had no idea what concept art here was. I didn't even know what car design is here. So that's always the question for me. Like, how did you know that you want to be a concept artist specifically, not the fashion designer, not the car designer, not industrial designer, but the concept artist?
Well, I always liked, I don't know, like movies and stuff like Star Wars and games like Half-Life and Quake and Doom and like all these other games and films, IPs and stuff. And when I was a kid, I'd always do like fan art of those. And a lot of like the old game manuals back then, they'd have like some of the models of the characters in them, or sometimes they'd even actually have like the old 2001 digital painting concept sketches in there. So when I became old enough to realize like, oh, someone did that, which was probably around when I was like 13, 14, around there. I was like, oh, okay, this might be an actual thing. So I, started Googling it and stuff because I was like super curious about that. Um, and then fast forward a couple months later, there was an article in like a Game Informer magazine that was actually about concept art, and I was like, oh wow, like you can actually do this thing, and it's legit. And here's these people talking about their career in this magazine article, and I'm just like, oh shit, okay, I'm gonna do that. Um, and then went from there. Started like watching Fangzhu tutorials on YouTube and like
Everybody
cynics,
starts
and
there. Everybody starts
yeah,
with Feng Shui in that generation. He was the only one like making tutorials back then.
yeah, no, like I remember like that was gee, like I remember watching his first one. It was like a rocket launch image he was making or something like that.
Oh, I remember that
That,
one. Three
that's,
parts.
that's
Three parts.
yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. But man, that's yeah. So pretty much went from there. Gumroads after that. Um, Took a Learn Squared class mentorship with Jama uh, Jerbev. I just butchered his last name. Don't kill me, Jama. um, but yeah, went from there. Jama helped me a ton, um, along with a lot of other people in the concept art community, such as my buddy Bo Zoneveld and Rembert Montauld, and I can name hundreds and thousands of people, that helped me along my way, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's cool. I met Bo in playgrounds in Berlin.
Oh yeah, man, I've been meaning to go to that.
Yeah, you should definitely. I love like all the events. There are some online events now happening. IFCC is one of them, but when they are live and real, it's much cooler. You meet all the artists and everything. Did you go to any festival?
Yeah,
Maybe
so
Lightbox.
I went to Lightbox last year, and that was amazing. I actually live across the street from where it happened now,
Great.
since I just moved back to Pasadena like a couple months ago. So yeah, no, so I'm like across the street from it. If it happens this year, fingers crossed. Um, but before that, went to THU. So Trojan Horse is a unicorn. And then also there's an event up in Toronto, Canada called Edge Control that I went to for a couple years in a row.
Awesome.
Yeah, they're all great events. I've been meaning to go to like IFCC and playgrounds and stuff. Um, and industry workshop and all that other stuff that's going on in Europe.
When the time is right, it will happen. Unfortunately, now we are stuck at home like we are not before as a freelancers. But yeah, when that fixes, we will all go to festivals. Probably.
Yeah, no.
I think that people gonna literally rush to get out and to see people and everything, to travel after all of this madness.
Oh, for sure. Like I'm gonna start booking plane tickets once they say it's safe to travel.
Yeah. That's it. That's it. And did you study any concept? You studied Learn Squared with Jama Yurbaev, right? And
Yeah.
that was your class, and it went on from there. So how did that help you evolve as an artist? Because you have very artistic, and I love when I see concept art that is artistic like that. There is brushes, moves, and stuff. So how did it all help you evolve as an artist?
So like going into like concept art and stuff, I started off like following like it's like the Fangzoo and like Shadi Safadi tutorials. So like I went from Fangzoo to like like the photo bashing sort of sketch on top thing to like Shadi's thing where it was like fill in the shapes with clipping masks and stuff.
Yeah.
Uh, and then Jama was like like my introduction to 3D pretty much, and using that. And then he also helped me understand how to mesh like like all the techniques that I learned up to that point, um, and taking that like the artistic sensibilities that I developed beforehand, and putting them towards a storytelling mindset and using 3D to help facilitate a lot of the early steps as far as like setting up perspective, figuring out your design and fully realizing it, and not just kind of photo bashing it and hoping it looks good sort of
Yeah,
thing.
there is a lot of photo bash in this industry. Like it makes me crazy when I see it.
Yeah, when it's done well, it's amazing to see. But it's very easy to get into that trap of just trying to make a cool image, but in the process, like instead of you controlling the images you're using, they kind of like control you, and you end up kind of just it's like a photo collage more than a concept sort of thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating to me. When you see, for example, I always mention him, Machi Kuchara. When you see his photo bash,
Yes.
it's done freaking nice. Freaking nice.
Yeah.
Everything's working with each other. It's painted over so you can't see it. It has a distinguished look to it, and it's all coherent as in one image. And then you go on ArtStation and you open images and you see, for example, a weapon or a character where somebody has taken engine of the car and he has bashed it on his chest and he has duplicated it on the other side, and something is happening. Everything looks pretty cool, but then you start looking at details as an art director would, and you start realize this is total crap. This is total crap because nothing is working.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's I can see how it's easy to get into that. I don't know. There was a point in time where I was um, in that same realm as far as trying to just make something cool, and just that was the goal. Um, But yeah, at the end of the day, that's not what this job is about. Um, it's about the design thinking behind everything, and why is that design the way it is, and how does it serve the story, or how does it serve the gameplay, depending on whether it's a game or a film or a TV show or what have you.
Yeah, we are problem solvers and
Exactly.
answerers. We need to answer the questions every time as a designer and artist. And I want to
Exactly.
know, I'm looking at your art and I want to know what influences your art. Where do you draw your inspiration from?
Oh, geez. It's a mix of things. Like it's from everything from like reading books, like like Dune, Ender's Game. I don't know. There's a ton of other books that I've got in my bookshelf behind me, but from that stuff to looking at a lot of classical painters and old masters. Like I grew up in New Hampshire, which I was like on the border of Massachusetts and New Hampshire, which in Massachusetts there's a city called Boston, and they have a museum there that has a ton of Zorn and Sargent paintings. And that's where like Zorn and Sargent hanged out, was in that city whenever they'd come to the U.S. from Paris and stuff. So I'd go there and like look at those paintings and stuff, and occasionally do studies in like my sketchbook with like gouache, or just do like a graphite study. And I think that also had a big influence on me. Um, just like seeing how they approach like brushwork, and just like seeing how they develop themselves, because they'd have like Sargent's, like some of his first paintings were there. Same thing with Zorn, and I think they had like some Monets and stuff there as well. So like it was like a huge mix of artists and styles. So uh, hanging out at that museum a lot probably helped.
Yeah, museums were always fun and will always be fun because they're the real thing. They're not the Google or anything. You literally feel the sense of the image when you're next to it. It's totally different than looking
Yeah,
at photo. Like you see every brush stroke and everything. I know when I was in Italy, I would visit museums and it was totally different from Google. Even though many artists search over the Google and everything, but I think it's a really good thing that you had the opportunity to look at the images like that.
yeah. No, I think if you ever have a chance, like to the people watching, like take it if you can go to a museum, even if it's a small one. Like you always like find something that whether you like the paintings or not, there's always something you can learn from them. Um, I think that's like invaluable, especially to bringing life into your designs. If you're going for that painterly style that like people like Jama have, or me in this case, or John Park, or any of those guys.
Any of the guys that bring traditional to the concept art.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Jamie Jones, Craig Mullins, all those guys. Yeah.
Oh yeah, Craig Mullins, the godfather of concept art.
Mhm.
uh,
And I still don't know how he does it.
Nobody knows, and it's with a mouse. It's with a freaking mouse. Like probably it has a ball. It's not even a laser mouse. It has a ball inside. It's one of those things. But he just proves the point. When you want to master something, you will master it no matter what. You can do it with your nose if you want, with your pinky finger. Like if you want to do it, you will do it eventually. He just proved that.
Yeah, if there's a will, there's a way.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And what I want to talk about, so very painterly style, I love it. I really love it, the composition and everything. I'm looking at the Survivor image at the moment because we are lagging a bit behind. And
Oh,
I want to know what's the process of your image? How do you create it? You said you use 3D. What kind of 3D do you use? Where does it go from there? Can you explain us a bit, elaborate on
yeah,
that?
for sure. So pretty much how I use 3D nowadays is I'll build out my assets. I use Blender and 3D Code. It depends on what I'm building. For organic stuff, I'll go to 3D Code, just because that's where its strengths are. And then for hard surface stuff, I'll use Blender and poly model it out. Um, for example, for the survivor image, it's like the crash ship there. Let me throw it in the chat for the people that want. Oh, it's on the stream.
No, don't worry. I timed it.
Okay,
I
yeah.
timed it, so when you start talking, it will
Perfect.
appear.
Yeah, no. Okay, sick. But yeah, anyway, so like the ship I built out in 3D pretty much, and then photo bash on top of that. And the mountains in the back were just some procedural like noise height map sort of stuff done in Blender quickly. Um, and then from there, I continue to photo bash on top, paint over here and there, and just try to make a cohesive image as best I can, pretty much. But yeah, it's a lot of it is like planning it out in the 3D stage, as far as like figuring out what the composition will be, where my elements will be, and just how the image will flow. And then from there, every other step going forward is just trying to set up the image for the most success possible, or as close to that as I can get, pretty much.
I see. So you use 3D and then you paint over it, which has become the norm in the industry. 3 years ago, it still wasn't a norm. Now it finally is.
Yeah, no, now everybody's on Blender now for the most part, or they're learning it, and 3D is, most concept artists like it's like the main thing in their workflow for a lot of people now. So it's exciting to see.
I've been playing in recent weeks with Blender and the environments, even though I'm not an environment guy. And I was stunned, literally stunned what kind of result you can get if you know 3D and Blender to sculpt everything in 3D and then position it. I was shocked how fast and easy you can get results. Like, it was...
Oh, yeah.
I was mind blown. And but yeah, the different doors are opening. I can't wait to see what's next. What's gonna next? Is it the VR? Is it something else? Is it a new program? Is it a new plugin? But the industry is changing every freaking second. I think as we speak, 3 new softwares are being built. Like, and
yeah, no, it's wild.
That's so freaking insane. Like 10 years ago, it was such a slower pace. I'm afraid, the only fear that I have in this industry is that it will become like a machine. And it's already too fast. But what if it becomes even faster, and it's becoming even faster? Is there gonna be an artistic style to anything? Because every freaking movie is starting to look the same. And
oh yeah.
And everything's looking the same all the time, the compositions, everything. However, there was a Spider-Verse, which was completely different because they took a guy which used a lot of time to investigate the new style. Do you think that will change, or it will always be the same, that art style wins over 3D and everything? What's your opinion about that?
Oh man, I'd like to hope that like the artistic side of things will always win. But at the end of the day, it is about making money. So I could see things going in the direction of getting as much content out there as possible by whatever means, which would include using like AI generators to base it off of stuff, and as much procedural stuff as possible, and going from there just to get something that looks good but might not exactly be pushing the bar forward, or innovating on what's been done before. So personally, I wanted to see I want to see more stuff like Spider-Verse, or like the Love Death Robot shorts that are on Netflix, or even some of these more like art house films that are coming out, like Parasite, or stuff like Shape of Water. Something that is just odd and makes you reconsider how you're doing things. But yeah, I don't know. What are your thoughts on that?
Tickles your imagination. Well, my thoughts about that is that it's definitely, as you said, it's all about the money. Our artist is always trying to escape the money. That's my opinion, and he's always trying to live a comfortable life, but with the least funds as possible. Because many artists like to draw more than to eat. And I hope that industry will at one moment realize that this speed is not acceptable and possible. We can produce Transformers every day, 7 movies of them per year, but it's all about explosions. Since Transformers, it lost the point. Like, you remember when I was watching Transformers cartoon, I loved that cartoon because it had a story and it had a passion and it had something very special to it, you know? And nowadays I'm having a feeling that we are losing that kind of passion because you're translating your soul to the screen or to the image, doesn't matter. And when something is too fast, you can't translate the soul because it's overtaken with information. And that happened in car design, for example. Car design, they were first producing one car per 7 years, then one car per 5 years, then one car per 3, then one car per 6 months at the end. And
Oh wow.
and now all the cars look the same. They maybe have Audi brand or BMW brand or this or that, but at the end of the day, they are all the same. Same
Yeah.
materials, same composition, same everything, same build, same platform. And that's what happens when you speed up too much, because the car designers are working overtime all the time. And that's happening with concept art at the moment. And I'm afraid that we are entering in that red zone where it will be like that. I hope that at one moment art direction we realize, and the people that pay, that I mean, they will never realize what I want, and that's
Yeah.
it's not all about the money, but to realize somehow to make the money without sacrificing the soul.
Yeah, for sure.
How, I have no idea how, but let's see how it goes.
Yeah, like one way I could see it working is maybe like they set up things where you'll have like that core team that is like the super creative going into it and just doing that like initial like pitch work or something just to get the idea going, um, and then use that to like fuel the IPs that they're creating.
Something
And
like
then they'd make
Avatar.
the style guides. Yeah, exactly. So you'd have like your style guide, and then you'd be able to make, 8 films off of that thing, and then you take that team, move them to a new project, or stuff like that. I think like Avatar, for example, seems to have a good approach. Like especially seeing the people that are working on the like the sequels that are about to come out.
Those are some superstars working there. Fausto Di Martini,
Yeah,
Jonathan Berube, who
it's
else? Like
dream
the
team.
like
It's like Finian McManus was on
yeah,
the team.
Finian.
Like John Park was on there. Nick Chandro is on that team.
It's like a heaven for concept artists, literally. You don't know who's better than who, literally.
Yeah, no, it's like it's crazy. And then you have guys like Steve Messing and Dylan Cole there too, and it's just like like there's so much awesomeness probably in like that one building, you know?
Yeah, they literally don't need to look outside for the information or anything or to learn new stuff. They just go past the decks of one guy and they pick up the new stuff, from the concept artist that does hard surface to concept artist that does environments to concept artist that does sketches. Like it's the best building in the world. I have that kind of feeling, you know.
Yeah, for sure. It's I don't know. Like I'd love to be a part of a team like that, like to that level of like expertise in each subject, like because you do have guys that are expert hard surface modelers that know how to make the perfect hard surface design, and then you have creature modelers there too, and um, you have like all these different disciplines that would be amazing to learn from.
Yeah, heaven for learning, heaven for working, literally. But what I want to know is, are you drawn to fantasy work more or to science fiction work? Because I can see you can do both of them. What draws you more?
Oh man, I think it really depends on what I'm working on at work, um, because that really determines what I want to work on for my personal work. Just because, say, if I'm working on a sci-fi project, I'll tend to just do more fantasy stuff. But if I'm working on a fantasy project, then it's more sci-fi stuff, or more, like real world sort of grounded stuff. Um, and personally, like I like sci-fi more, just based off of like the aesthetics of it all. Like having those like neon lights and stuff, and those cyberpunk vibes and all that. I just enjoy that a bit more. Though there's a lot of stuff in fantasy that is fun to explore, um, especially like just combining those two. Like having something like Dune, where it is sci-fi but it's also fantasy, in aspects is really cool to me. So that's what I'm trying to do with my personal projects now, is finding a way of mixing them together and hoping that it'll be successful eventually. But yeah.
The dots will always connect at the end of the day.
Yeah.
They always do connect. No matter what you do, you just work hard and they always connect. But you worked on some really big titles. You have in your Blade Runner, Marvel movies. How did that happen? How did you get invited? Let's talk about the first one, the big project that you worked on.
Oh man. Okay. So what is this? Back in 2016, I was going to like a little community college up back in my home state there, uh, for graphic design. And then one like the second to last week of school, I got this email from this VFX company, Luma Pictures, and they wanted me to have an interview and possibly work on Doctor Strange. So I had the interview. Everything went great. They helped me with my relocation. I flew out to LA like the next month and started working on Doctor Strange and like Underworld, what Blood Wars or something like that. And then a few other films that have yet to be released. And that was my first big job. And like my first real exposure to working on the film side of the industry. Because before that, it was more like video game and short film sort of freelance gigs here and there. So being able to like go out and experience that was, I think, a huge influence on where my career has gone, pretty much. But yeah.
So you worked from the Luma Pictures, right, with Marvel and stuff like that on the really big projects that everybody wants to work on. How was your experience working on that kind of franchise?
It was fun. Like working on Marvel stuff, like it's really enjoyable because you do have like the comics to reference to an extent for a lot of the design work that you're doing. And then also you have all the amazing team members that are working at Marvel internally, and you're seeing their concepts as well, and seeing like what direction they're going in, so you can riff off of that stuff as well, and go from there. But overall, yeah, like working on those projects, it's amazing. If you ever have a chance, do it, obviously, because it's just like it feels like I don't know, like a once in a lifetime sort of like rush for that first project, sort of thing. Like you just like that drive that you have to um like do your best and all that. So
I always had a dream to work on Marvel project. I still do. I never worked, and I can only imagine how big that kind of project is to work on, and how stressful it can be to work on that kind of project.
yeah, oh man. So like for a lot of like the Marvel projects that I was on, and some of those other films as well, it's like you have to do 3 images a day usually. Um, and so you get your process down to like a T pretty much, and um, you have to be efficient. Like you have to be at your most efficient pretty much going into that, and know how you're gonna work. Otherwise, it's easy to stumble, and that's what happened to me my first couple of weeks of working. It was like I'm dying, pretty much, and I'd get up at like 6 a.m. And be one of the first people in the office, pretty much, get in at like say like 8 or whatever. Well, like most people would get in at 9 or whatever, and then just work super hard until like 7:30, and then go home, and then repeat that for like 3 weeks, and that was the first, uh, you know, uh, I guess that stint on Doctor Strange there, pretty much.
You worked on Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Thor, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And then yeah, there's a few other things there, and then like also some things that I'm working on now that I can't talk about, but that are in the same realm.
Tell us, tell us.
I wish. They'll send their ninjas after me, and then you won't hear from me ever again.
Yeah, probably someone will eventually kill you like overnight.
Yeah, no, exactly.
I wouldn't be surprised if they really have some real superhero there, like coming for artists that coming for people that break NDAs. Like,
Oh man, it would be like. Wait, have you seen The Boys on
yeah,
Amazon?
yeah, amazing show. I
Yeah,
love it.
it'll be like that. One of those guys.
Yeah,
It's like,
yeah, it was totally different show, man, than everything. Did you like the show?
oh yeah, I just love the anti-hero, but they're still hero aspect of it all. Like how there's real people and they do make mistakes and all this other stuff, and they do make messed up decisions and play that political game as far as in the corporate world and all that. So I was just like, oh yeah, this is super awesome. Because usually it's about saving the day or saving the universe or what have you, and
Everything's
um,
white and black in the previous versions, and then all of a sudden you watch the boys, which are gray. Everything's gray.
yeah,
You have no idea should you turn left or right, look forward or back, like, and but that's life. That's life.
yeah, no, exactly.
Same with Game of Thrones. Like, it was the first show ever that was not. There is a main guy. He has a big fall, and then he comes back and he wins. Like, this was like, this is real life. You can die in it, you know.
Yeah, exactly. So seeing stuff like that, seeing content like that is always refreshing. Just to break out of the whole, like the black and white sort of thing, good guy, bad guy aspect of it all.
Yeah, I love when I saw that Game of Thrones has been the guy, George R. R. Martin, has been writing it since 1996. So
Wow.
his
When I was born, the year I was born, that's crazy.
yeah, man. Can you imagine that? Like, he started back
wow.
then, and then he started publishing stuff. Before that, he was working for Hollywood. He was writing scripts and stuff like that, and then he decided to make this. But because he had experience with how movies are made, he was like, I want to make something 30 years from now that maybe will be able to be produced, because at that moment it was not possible to make it, and he had everything in his mind as a scene. So yeah, I love that. I love that.
Yeah, no, it's like having creative people like that can bring a world to life in the way that he's done. Uh, and a bunch of other authors before him and filmmakers are in that same category have done. It's crazy,
Yeah. So guys, please do hit the subscribe button if you still haven't, and post the questions in comments if you want to ask some questions to David. We will be responding them as the stream goes. We have 30 more minutes, so feel free to post them in the chat. What I want to know, David, is while you were learning and you didn't go to art school, you went to learn squared and like that, what was the biggest struggle for you while you were learning everything?
Man, probably just figuring out the direction I wanted to go in with everything. Like, did I want to be a pure design person, or did I want to be more of like a keyframe, come up with a composition and lighting and all that stuff person? And for me, I kept going back and forth between both of those, which in the end I think helped. But I think I wasted some time there, and that I could have just focused on one, gotten really good at that, and then switched to the other, and then done the same thing there instead of just like jumping back and forth. As a little like ADD there, as far as like like, ooh, like it's like there's something shiny over there. I'm gonna go look at that thing, and then oh, over there's something now. So that's probably like the biggest struggle, other than figuring out that concept art is a thing that you can do.
So you wanted to do also design, except for the keyframes. You wanted to do that.
Yeah. So
what
like
was
right
the
now,
what was the breaking point that made you do the keyframes? Was it the job that you got, or it was just something that pushed you in that direction?
it was like it was probably because I started like watching way more films, and studying them around like what 4 or 5 years ago now, um, and just studying like both their design, like watching Terminator 2 like 10 times in a row just to like see how they compose shots and stuff, but also seeing how like watching the behind the scenes and seeing how they built like the props and all this other stuff, and all the prosthetics and all that stuff there, because knowing that stuff also helps the design process, if you're building stuff for that. Um, but as far as like keyframes and what pushed me towards that, yeah, it'd probably be like just studying those films and being like, oh, okay, I want to try something like that now. Like or watching, enter a film's name and then being like, oh, that's cool. Let me see if I can do something like that.
So you studied masters also when it comes to composition and everything. That's how you work.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's invaluable, um, because you do learn a lot from both doing master studies in paintings, but also doing master studies of film frames because uh, how like the top tier filmmakers work. They are masters in composition and making the composition serve a story purpose, which is super valuable if you do want to end up working in film. Um, so I'd recommend doing that to anyone watching that would be interested in going in that direction.
Everybody analyzes somebody. Just a question who, I always say. And the more you analyze, the more you know, and the more you know, the better image can it be. Because at the end of the day, image is made out of the cluster of other images, of other information that you gathered inside of you. And
Yeah.
it's like a creative chaos of a cluster, and then all of a sudden, everything seems to be right and to fit in the right place. And what I want to know is, you do keyframes, and we spoke about the approach that you start with 3D, but do you also sketch with your hand, or you mostly do in your work over Wacom tablet?
So yeah, so like I've got like a sketchbook or two sketchbooks. One for personal projects. Um, so like I'll do quick pen or pencil sketches in there. They're not super polished. Most of them I'll never post anywhere because they're super ugly. And it's just about getting the idea down. And like sometimes I'll have dreams and I'll be like, oh, that was a really cool dream, and then I'll go in and jot that down. And it's a similar thing with work. Like maybe before work, in the shower, I'll be thinking about like how I'll approach this thing, and I'll be like, oh, that's really cool. I want to make sure I don't forget that. And then I'll take it out of my bag and write that down, throw it back in, and then go execute it at work, pretty much. Um, but as far as like the design process of things, it's a bit of back and forth. Like sometimes I'll use like sketches, whether in Photoshop or traditionally, or I'll just design the thing straight up in 3D if I already have like the vision of what it will look like in my head, or at least like 80% of it or whatever.
I see. So we have one question, and Damian is asking, how long does it take you to make one image? For example, who is rising? Uh,
Oh man,
HU
let's
is
see.
rising. So how
Oh
long does
yeah,
it take you? How many?
like
Let's make a bigger question out of it. How many iterations do you go through in black and white, or is it immediately getting in the final image? How do you work?
oh man, so I usually do start with a black and white sketch. Though there are those rare occurrences where you just know what the thing's gonna look like and you just want to go in and make it. Um, so in the case of this Who's Rising, that one was sort of like I already knew what I wanted to go in with, and it took probably like 10, 20 hours, probably 2 days of work. So yeah, like 10 hours a day, so like 20 hours of just from gathering photo reference, doing the sketch, building the stuff out in 3D, um, and then like the final execution. But there are times that other images are Like sometimes I'll spend like a week on something and then I don't like it, and then I'll throw it away, and then I'll, come back to it a month later and try again. But for client work, it's a day, 2 days at most per image, and then sometimes you do have cases where you are doing those 3 images a day or 4 images a day, and it's just more about getting the ideas out there versus polishing it. So yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the things that artists are always talking about the industry, that how fast it is. We mentioned that in the beginning, but many artists say always when we do concept art, it literally you work so fast that it can't look polished or good. And
No,
literally, you
exactly.
don't want to show it to anybody. Like, you don't want to
No,
show it. Then that's another problem in the industry. Like, how do you get a job if you don't have anything to show except, of course, your personal projects and everything? But that was always fascinating to me when I was hearing that kind of stories. Like, what the hell is happening, you know?
yeah, like at least for me, like the projects I've been on, like like I'll have like maybe 2 images that I had the chance to work up to a level where I think would be nice to put in my portfolio. Um, and most of the other ones are like they're cool idea wise, but just from an execution standpoint, um, they just don't have that like the what the industry level is now as far as like polish and uh, having those really like thought out like painting choices and stuff.
Yeah. And if you worked on some project like that you do super polished, what would be your approach to it?
As far as
The
like
stages that you go through.
well, it would probably all be the same as far as starting in 3D, uh, and just pushing the 3D as much as possible first. Like first, like these weapons you're looking at for Genlock, like for that stuff, it's um, very simplistic as far as like the 3D, basic textures and all that. But if I was pushing it to like the best that I can do sort of thing, it would be fully texturing it, getting in there, and if I had the time, making sure all the UVs are nice and stuff. And then once you have a solid 3D base, it really makes that final image sing that much more. Um, and you just don't have to like, really like play with it as much, or like mess with the thing or photo bash with it as much. And it's just way more streamlined, I think.
I see. And what do you think about people that consider the 3D is not an art? What do you think about that kind of people who say that?
Like at the end of the day, like I think that's dumb, and because it's it's all dependent on the medium, and you're making something at the end of the day. You're still creating, so it really doesn't matter what you're using. Um, because you could be a person that welds stuff out of metal, right? And you could technically you could do all your concepts like with old trucks or whatever if you were fast enough, right? Like deconstructing old trucks and building them into mechs and doing that stuff. Or like using the stuff that like we use as digital artists. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, I think. And people should look at it that way, I think.
People should concentrate on the final image. That's at least my opinion. You can make
Yeah,
it. We
exactly.
can make it with blood. I don't care if it's made from blood, but as long as it looks good, doesn't matter the material that you made it from.
Yeah, no, exactly.
And I know that many artists have that problem where they think that 3D is not an art. I mean, now it's changing in the last 2 years, I must say. But before that, you remember that there were even people who were saying like 3D is not art. You can do only 2D. We don't consider this as an art. You are not an artist. Now there is a different story. I know that in 2019 and 20, no, actually in 2020, there was people are always questioning what is real, what is not, who is fake, who's not, and and recently there is a question that's circling around the internet, and that's who is a real artist. And who is a real
Oh,
professional, who is not. And I've seen that kind of tweets on my Facebook, and I was pretty shocked to see them. Because for me, artist is everybody who draws. Doesn't matter how
yeah,
successful he is. But again, I remember so many people were insulted because somebody posted that you're not professional artist until you're earning. And
yeah,
I must say that I agree on that with him, but then again, who am I to judge anything?
yeah,
Because what's your opinion about that subject?
yeah. So, like, I guess in this day and age, it could, as far as being considered like a professional artist, it could go anywhere from making money now to like having 200,000 followers on Instagram, which, some people might consider that, like a success, right? But as far as like the whole like uh, not true art sort of argument, I think it goes back to a lot of the stuff that was happening and like the old days with like magazine illustrations and stuff, and a lot of painters are like Norman Rockwell and all these guys. You're not real artists because you're doing commercial, like calling out Andrew Loomis and all that. Like that was a thing back then. So I think it's just more of the same, like going into our day and age. Similar to how like back in the day, like parents would say like TV would rot your brain, and now it's video games, and then before TV it was radio, and you know,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
I always laugh when I see that image. There is, when I was a kid, they were always telling us, "Don't get too close to your screen; it will damage your eyes." And now you see kids
yeah, no,
holding
exactly.
tablet in 1 centimeter from their head. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, no, exactly. And they're like 5 or whatever.
Yeah, yeah, and they're 1 centimeter looking 12 hours a day on the LCD, and nobody's having problems with eyes, which is quite fascinating, to be honest, you know. But
Yeah, no, I'm curious how it'll be in a couple years, just
yeah,
to see like the case studies because they'll be fully like, I don't know, developed as far as they'll be adults by then. So
yeah, I read a quite like 1 month ago when there was written, I come from it was in Serbian, but this is what was written. I come from a generation where we put sugar in a Coke. so, so so Coke doesn't have sparkly bubbles.
oh man.
Yeah, that was my generation. Like, I'm 32 now soon, and that was my generation. And then yeah, everything's changing, same with art, with everything. Like, all the time there's fluctuations, and you never know in which direction they will go, because one day something is good, the next day something is bad. So that's quite interesting. And where do you think this whole industry is going now with this, except for the automatization that we talked, and what kind of art will we be producing?
Well, I think that in the coming years, like VR will be more and more of a key player in image making. Um, just based off of how the technology is evolving right now. Though they'll have to figure out a way. I know a lot of people still get sick of, like the motion sickness and all that stuff.
I
So
tried it,
figuring
didn't
out
like it. I
that,
tried it, didn't like it. To be honest, I love
yeah,
the whole feeling, because I all of a sudden I was feeling everything, but that sickness after it destroyed whole my day on THU 2019.
no, that's the thing. And like I personally don't get that, but I have friends that do, and like they'll just like they'll use it for 30 minutes and then they have to go lie down for the rest of the day pretty much, and figuring out a way of circumventing that or finding a solution to that pretty much I think will uh, help a lot with adopting that into the greater industry. um, but as far as like other software, uh, I think just making like the 3D tools easier, which they're becoming easier and easier, will help a lot with just like getting the like technical side of things out of the way and just focusing on the creative aspects of it all and figuring out what the thing you're making is going to look like. Um, yeah.
Yeah, it's. I'm looking at the allies, your image that you posted. Was this inspired by Ender's Game?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
Like I
knew
was
it.
reading that, like
When I saw short legs and them shooting at each other, I knew it because you mentioned in the beginning of the conversation Ender's Game.
yeah, no, like as that was like back. I think that was like the first time I was reading it was back then. Actually, when I was making those things, like it was like right before the movie was coming out. I think a bit before that. I remember trailers or something like.
Yeah, we have a question from Tyler. By the way, he said, "David, will you autograph my face?"
Oh my god, that's one of my friends. He's just, oh my god, he's real good too. Tyler there. Um, but yeah, no, learned a lot from that guy. Hi, Tyler.
Hi, Tyler. Thank you for the question. I hope that David will sign your face and
Oh my
with a red
gosh.
big pen,
Yeah, yeah, permanent.
permanent tattoo on the forehead.
Yeah, yeah. Oh.
So yeah. One more question that I want to ask you. You visited THU, you visited Lightbox. Do you consider that it's very important for artists to visit that kind of festivals, especially the young ones, and why? What was your experience with jobs there, connections, and stuff like that?
So going like, I think networking is a huge proponent and is a huge part of this industry. Like I'd pretty much say 50% of it is your portfolio and its quality, and then the other 50% is making those connections with both companies and the individual artists out there. Because at the end of the day, you will be working with those people, and if they do have a job they can't take, they are looking for people to recommend. So like having those connections does help, and going to events like THU or Lightbox or the playgrounds and like all these other amazing events that are happening in the world will aid in that. Um, and you also get the chance to meet like super inspiring people at those events. Like at THU, I met like Ian McCaig and like Carlo Ortiz and um, a bunch of other amazing artists over there. Ben Morrow, another great artist, and had amazing conversations with all these people. And I think that stuff is where you, I don't know, you learn a ton. Like you learn more than watching a tutorial, or watching a YouTube video or whatever. It's like having those conversations with those people, and like asking them the questions that a Gumroad might not be able to answer for you, whether it be on an artistic side or just like a mentality side of how you approach things, or even on just like a human side of things, like, and just figuring out how to be the artist that you want to be, pretty much.
Yeah, it's always much easier when you are in person with somebody than when you're watching Gumroad and stuff like that. They're amazing Gumroads, but when there is somebody to answer the question, it works much faster. And how is it for you for the jobs? Did you get any opportunities by meeting people there?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Like just because a lot of people that go to those events as speakers or even representing companies for recruiters and stuff, they are there. So you do have the chance to talk to them and show them your portfolio and get portfolio reviews, all that stuff. So going to events and signing yourself up for those portfolio reviews will help a lot. Even if you don't get anything, now they're just aware of you and that you exist. So like the next time you do apply to them, you'll be able to be like, "Hey, here's my updated portfolio," and then they'll be like, "Oh, wait, he got better. Okay, let's hire him now." uh, so stuff like that does happen. So like, don't ever be afraid to show your work to recruiters or artists that you think are godly or whatever. Because at the end of the day, everybody's a person, and it's you're just trying to get as good as you can, and for the people that are giving the jobs, if you can meet their needs for the project they're on, then they'll hire you for the most part, from my experience. um, or if not, they'll call you down the road or something.
Yeah, connections, super important, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. What do you think of that?
I think that many artists, this is my experience from talking with artists, and I met thousands of them in the last 4 years, and many artists are very shy, and that's quite okay. But many artists don't want to show their work. Literally, they are afraid that somebody will tell them something bad. And when they speak with me, I always tell them, well, you when you start being, let's say, professional, I'm raising my fingers as I say that, when you're a professional artist, you will be thrown tomatoes at you 24/7. Like that, you can create the best artwork in the world, but feedback, there will be always a negative feedback. At the end of the day, you need to change this, you need to improve this, and the more you get used to it, the faster you can evolve. Because if you're very possessive about your work and you're holding it back and hiding it from everybody, then it can't improve because there is nobody to comment on it. And I've seen on THU artists that come and don't want to show their work because they're afraid. And I always tell them, you can live in your bubble, but your bubble is very lonely because that's just you. And if you want to make something bigger, get out the freaking bubble and start talking with the people and show your weaknesses. That's the only way to evolve for me. For me, THU was amazing. I had great experiences there, met great people, drink with amazing artists, and for jobs it was really good. THU, IFCC, playgrounds, everywhere I was, it was amazing. And I always strongly suggest to every artist to visit them somehow. I know it's not cheap. It costs a shit ton of money, but
Yeah, no, for sure.
but it's worth it at the end of the day. It's worth it at the end of the day. Every 90% of artists I talked with that went there, some borrowed money, some had to go in debt. They got to a job because they had a goal in their mind. When you come to festival and you don't have a goal in your mind, you're freaking not getting anything. First, you need to have an idea what you want. So that's my observation about it.
No, I 100% agree with that, especially in regards to having that goal when you're going to those things and, being really determined about achieving that goal.
For me, goals are everything. I made an even video about that you need to have goals about life in general. What do you want from it? Because there is that new age thing where everybody's like, I know what I don't want. Well, nobody cares what you don't want. The question is what you really want. Because many people want, for example, to work in this industry because they saw it's cool. But some of them deep inside don't even want to work in this industry and they are not aware of it. And that's the question, finding yourself, who you really are. When you have a goal, it will be achieved much easier, because if you can think about anything, starting with the girls, starting with relationships, starting with food. If you have a goal, so when I enter a restaurant, when I come, this is what happens to me 90% of time. I come there and I don't know what I want to eat. And I enter and always I pick the worst food. I always pick the worst food because I have no idea what it is. I'm gonna try something new, and then the person comes and the waiter and says, "Oh my God, this is amazing! You should try this." And then you pick that, and it was his idea, it was his goal to give you that, and then it sucks. But when I come to a restaurant and I know what I wanna eat, doesn't matter which restaurant it is, I always get the great food because that's what I want. It's the same with getting the job. What do you really want? I knew from the early age, actually I didn't know, I had to do it because of my passport, that I need to work as a freelancer to survive. Because I can't get out of Serbia, the only possibility I have is to do freelance, and that's it. And that was my goal in mind. And guess what? Through 4 years after that, I'm working as a freelancer quite successfully and building the brand because I wrote it on the paper. So yeah.
No, that's really important. And also, like, not just having them in your head, like what you just said, like writing it down and making it a real thing, like even if it is on a piece of paper or in a notebook, and just being like, this is what I'm gonna do, and just do everything you can to get there, pretty much.
Why do you think people don't write that kind of stuff on the paper? Is it a fear that it's not gonna happen? Is it a fear that it's too big?
It might be. I think it could just be the fear of failing, possibly, or that it is too big and that they will fail, that sort of thing. or at least that's what it was for me for the longest time. And then, once I started writing it down and keeping track of those things and making small goals to get to the big goal, right? That I actually started making leaps and bounds as far as like my life and career and all these other things that go into like being a person. Like even now I have like a whiteboard next to me that's like filled with like all my like yearly goals and then some smaller goals on
That's
like sticky
amazing.
notes and
That's
stuff,
amazing.
Yeah.
I,
So
I always tell to people, not just artists, I'm 8 years older than you, but I always tell to people, you want to learn about your ego. Try going with girls. You will see how much rejection you will get, and you will see how that your ego needs to be in control, because that's when you're pure yourself. You're showing yourself to the world, and rejection is hard, but it's three times harder when it comes from another person that you think that is on your level. It's different with job, and I always say to everybody, you want to learn to control your ego, that's the way to go. That's the way to go. That's the way, and then you will learn that the job is just a job, and that there is a possibility you will be rejected, but there is other door that you will be opening much easier than that one. That's my experience.
No, exactly. Yeah, no, 100% agree there. And also like I tend to pick up like hobbies that are like humbling. Like I rock climb and used to do martial arts and stuff, and I started learning guitar a couple like 8 years ago. But it's all stuff that like you suck when you like start those things. So like having multiple avenues of I guess progression as a person, I think helps for that that greater whole of yourself.
Yeah, what kind of martial arts did you do?
Oh man, what like Wing Chun, my main one. So like all those people that if you've guys seen the like Ip Man movie with Donnie Yen.
Yeah, amazing movie,
Yeah,
amazing actor.
Yeah. So like that.
I immediately have in my head the sound.
Yeah, yeah. All those punches. But yeah, like that, and I did like Krav Maga for a little bit when I first moved to LA. But that was like only for like a month or two.
Yeah.
Just so I could like focus on like climbing and other stuff.
I will tell you one personal story about ego and everything, where that's the moment where I learned a lot. That giving up is not an opportunity. So I used to train kickboxing, and I did it semi-professionally for 4 years. But when I came there, I was how old was I? 20 years. I was 20 years old, so long time ago. And I came there, and we had a class. And when you come there, you have no idea what you're doing. Like there are fighters that do it for 3 years before you. They fight like crazy. So I came there, and this is such a funny story. I came there, and first class, and he's showing you front and rear punch and stuff like that, and you're doing it. And one moment the bell rings, and they're like, prepare, we're gonna make fights. Everybody choose a partner. Man. And a girl comes and she chooses me. A girl. So yeah, I know it's 2020 now, we are all equal and everything, but at the end of the day, it's a huge ego crush for you when a girl beats you in a physical fight. She beats the shit out of me. She demolished me. So I would put my hands down and she would punch me purposely in my head. And she punched me, I think, 10 times. 10 times. And she was, by the way, a pretty girl. And she demolished me. And I swear, after the workout, I wanted to cry. I'm 20 years old and I wanted to cry. And I go home and I lay in my bed and I'm like, I'm not coming tomorrow. I'm not coming tomorrow to the workout. And but I decided to go. My friends call me and they're like, stop being weak, Darko, come, it doesn't matter, blah, blah, blah. And I come. And that day I came literally afraid that she will beat me again. She was, by the way, if I remember correctly, Eastern European champion for 70 kilos.
Wow.
For 60 kilos. She beat it. When
Yeah.
you wouldn't believe me how she punched me. I remember she kicked me with the leg. She spinned me like literally like in a movie. and
Yeah.
and that finished. So I come in there and I'm literally shaking so they don't invite me again to the sparring session, and she doesn't break my nose or something. But
Yeah.
nobody calls me. One day, second day, third day, month passes. I'm starting to learn the punches. She comes, she shows me. After 1 month, she takes me as her apprentice. And after 3 months, after 1 month, every month they accept new students. After 1 month, new students are coming. And we are working out, and I'm punching the bag with her, and all of a sudden, bell, ding, 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 ding. We are going sparring, and she picks a guy, she beats the hell of him. And you know what happens? The guy doesn't come back to workouts, and she comes and she says, "Do you now understand why they made me beat you?" And I was like, I completely understand. She was like, because we immediately differentiate who's gonna stay, who's gonna go. Because 90% of people, 99% of people leave because their ego is hurt that the girl beat them.
Mhm.
And it was such a great lesson to me. Never give up. Never give up. Doesn't matter. Ego can be controlled. It's all about moving forward.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. You know, like keeping that spirit and like keeping going with whatever it was that you just got destroyed at. um, I think is, you know, like what makes or breaks a person. You know, whether it be a physical goal like working out or learning a martial art or something, or even artistic goals as well. Just, you know, doing it when you don't want to do it is a big thing that you have to do to be successful at things.
You have to overcome your inner conflicts. One of the conflicts that
Exactly.
everybody has is being beaten by somebody who's weaker than them. And being beaten, that's one of the conflicts. Doesn't matter in which subject or field you put it, that's one of the conflicts that everybody has. What if I fail? And it's an inner battle. It's a complete inner battle that you need to win. And because I won that inner battle, I spent 4 years in that club. And she took me as her apprentice for 1 year. I learned from her how to punch with my left leg. I was faster than anybody in the club. But can you imagine if I left because of the ego that was bruised? I think that happens to many artists. Can you imagine if I left? Like, I would never be so happy like I was. That was one of the happiest times I had.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, yeah, like not giving up, you know, and even when you are like down and, you know, like down and out sort of thing. Super important.
Yeah. So, I have a final question, and we're finishing this stream, guys. What is your advice to any student out there, except for this talk about girl beating me? What's your advice?
Oh, man. Let's see. As far as like concept art, I'd say uh, pick what you want to do, what industry you want to work at, like whether it's video games, film, animation. Uh, I guess film and TV are in the same realm. Or even like working on like VR titles, because that's now a thing that you can do. I'd say, you know, choose the direction you want to go in. Look at the portfolios of people that you look up to that are working in that same uh, area of the industry, and use those as like your benchmark, and not necessarily go for their same style, but just be like, okay, they all have this general quality to their work that is the industry standard, and I have to get to that. And you know, uh, a good way of doing this is like sometimes I used to like go on to like the ArtStation homepage and, you know, take a thumbnail of my work and then like Photoshop it in there just to see if it would hold up against all the other amazing artworks that are up there, and stuff like that. And I think just like don't give up. Things are gonna get hard. There's gonna be times where, you know, you'll want to give up, where it feels hopeless, or um, you know, you feel like you're not progressing or whatever. but you always will be progressing as long as you're making stuff. So just keep making stuff, keep striving towards those goals, and do the best you can.
Yeah. So guys, that was David Tilton featuring DarMar. Thank you for coming, David.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for this talk, and I'm expecting to see where your career develops from here and what's the next thing you will be doing. I will be following closely.
Thanks a ton, man. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much one more time for coming on the stream. Guys, if you still haven't hit the subscribe button, please do. Have a beautiful day or beautiful night. I don't know what's time at your place, and I will see you on the next stream. Bye, everybody.
Bye.